Hey folks, AceTCG here, and in today's video we have a new form of content for the channel. So you may or may not be in the One Piece TCG Reddit. I would suggest that you do. I myself am quite new to Reddit, but there is super useful information there, and in this video we're going to be showcasing and going through some of my thoughts on some of the stuff that we can find there. So this post is a breakdown of matchup win rates from the 19th of the 4th, and the date currently is the 20th, so this was posted yesterday. We can see 11 hours ago. But what this is Tommy Nego 95, I hope I pronounced that right, has been putting together breakdowns of all of the win rates of the decks that are being used in the competitive One Piece Simulator Discord. So if you don't know about that Discord, the Discord is what it sounds like. You're able to go in there, rank up, and you'll be playing against someone who has a like-minded want to play competitively for One Piece, and then you'll gain MMR in the background. The more wins you get, the higher your MMR. The person with the most MMR at the end of a specific season gets a prize, etc. One of the cool things about the Discord is that when you're actually queuing for a game, you enter what deck it is that you're using, and then it will note down the winner of the overall match. So this is how they know, for example, that Zoro won 50 games and lost 60 games, is because it'll notate both of them, which is really, really nice. So we can see that there's a lot of games. The last one that Tommy posted, I think, was 11,000 games. I'm not 100% sure how many games this is, but you can see, so this is insane amount of knowledge for us, really. These are the leaders that are being used the most, and we do have a really nice breakdown here in color. So yeah, you can just see here a lot of information about the specific wins. We can see the amount of games that are actually being played, which is really helpful for us. Immediately you could go in and see what are the most played decks, and this is super useful for me coming into preparing for regionals. Next week I have an online tournament, and a lot of things that are always in my mind is like, what are the most common decks right now, and having these regular updates allow me to get past that, like, well, Katakuri is seeing a lot of play, well, Mori is seeing a lot of play. Some of the things that are really interesting that we'll go through first with this is some of the rise in popularity due to some of the recent tops. So one of the more popular ended, like lower end, so like tier 2, tier 1.5 decks, being Newgate, has actually spiked quite a lot in the total amount of actual plays that it's seen since it won that regional out in... where did it win it? I don't know. Australia ways? I think it was Australia. Yes, maybe. But we can see that since the last update, 1,732 games were played with Newgate, and before that it was way lower. It was a deck that was like seen as doing pretty well, but we can see that like overall it has a 53.41% win rate from the total amount of games that it's been played, whereas we'll go to something like Katakuri, which is expected to be one of the most played decks, and it currently says 48.01. Now, there are some differences in the fact that obviously a lot more Katakuri games are coming in, so you do have to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's nice to see overall consistency, what the win rates are looking like, how popular the decks are. So this is something that I would be checking up regularly myself if you haven't yet, especially if you're looking to play competitively. But the most useful aspect of this is this breakdown that we have here. Now, this may be an image that you've seen before in the past for One Piece. You may see it pop up on some of your social medias and you don't really know what it is. This is a breakdown of all of the games that have been played by these leaders against these leaders. So you see a lot of white. They're the ones there. They don't have enough data to be able to give an accurate breakdown of the win rate to that, and that also links back to the amount of total games that are being played here. So yeah, I've put it in here just because it's easier for me to look down. So how these docs work is on the left is the leader that was played, and on the top is the opponent. So, for example, if I go here to Zoro, I can go horizontally across and see the win rate of Zoro versus Katakuri, Zoro versus Sakazuki. So immediately we can see, I'll just go through all of them straight away, and any of them that like ring a red flag to me straight away as ones that I want to talk about. So we can see that Zoro has a 55% win rate against Katakuri, which I'm not overly shocked about. I think Katakuri's always struggled a little bit with like super aggressiveness because you kind of want to be aggro yourself. You want to get to that mid to late game because that's when your 10 moms are coming, so that doesn't shock me. A 52-ish% win rate against Sakazuki. And this does shock me a little bit. I feel like with the Rush Zoro and with the pressure, I feel like it would kind of do a bit more damage. I know last format it hurt it a bit more, but I think we've got a little bit more removal coming in for Sakazuki, so it can deal with those pesky one drops a lot better than it could anyway. It already had an okay matchup, but like Zoro always had like the ability to just unga bunga, especially with like Robin coming out. But one that does interest me, and the last one that we have is Zoro versus Moria. Actually has a super negative win rate. In the way it's only winning 30% of the time, so it has a 30% win-loss rate into Moria from the data that we have here, and that's understanding, I think, right? It's like Moria is able to get a lot of value. It has Absoloms coming out of the wazoo, so it's able to just remove that. The Perona's early, able to remove that, and then the value from the Gecko Moria is scary, but like this is super useful for me because if at any point, and this happens a lot, like when I'm trying to cook, I'm trying to do all these things where I'm like, maybe we should take this deck or this deck. Like, this is super helpful to me because I know that, like, these are the 3 most popular decks, and we know that because of this breakdown. Katakuri has 8,500 games here. Sakazuki has 8.2k. Gecko Moria has 9.2k. Like, so we're able to see that, like, these are the top 3. And of the top 3 that you're going to willingly face, 2 of them are relatively 50-50. One's a little bit even more favoured than a 50-50. But one of the triangle is such a terrible matchup for you that this would sway me against from playing Zoro. Like, this is one of the reasons that I'm always like on the fence about a lot of decks that I'm playing. Is it's like, yes, I can have a good matchup against Katakuri, and yes, I may have an okay matchup against Saka. But like, if I run into Moria, this game is going to feel like unwinnable at times. Like, this may not seem drastic and you may think you're still winning 30% of the time, but like, to me this just highlights such like a huge disadvantage that this would just sway me away because you don't know how many Morias you're going to play in a day. Like, this tournament that I have coming up is 10 rounds, and when I went to Krefeld I played so many Katakuris, but when I went to Wolverhampton I played like Morias and so many Yamatos, you know, so you don't know like what you're going into the day, and having one of the top 3 decks that you could possibly come into being so bad is super useful information to know. Just looking at it means I don't have to immediately spend 12 hours practicing this deck to figure out that Moria is a terrible matchup for me. And there's breakdowns for all of the other ones, so we can do quick ones. Like Whitebeard has 45% against Katakuri, which has flipped, by the way. Whitebeard used to have a really nice matchup into Katakuri. That's changed a lot, I think, with the newer triggers like the Kiki Nojo, Okiku is what I'm thinking. Kikunojo. Okiku being like 4 for 6 immediately, like that's pretty scary. Like and they just have a lot more value now, especially with like the impact coming out. They can remove your things a lot easier than they used to be able to. So yeah, pretty scary. It does have a pretty nice matchup though, going into the Sakazuki and into the Moria, according to the data. So honestly, this is more towards the 50-50 that I'm comfortable with. So Whitebeard would be a deck that I would potentially look at. Like going on, I think it definitely catches people off guard. But then we look at some of the other matchups that it has, and we can see some data that's missing because of like a lack of popularity at the moment. It has a pretty bad matchup into Enel, but I don't think Enel is very popular right now. In general, we can again go back and take a look at Enel, and we had 1,800 games. Actually, that's a lot more than I expected. So like, I doubt you're gonna run into Enel, but apparently you have a about similar matchup as you do against the Katakuri. Again, with the impact coming in, I suppose that can be scary. Really good matchup into the Yamato. Not really surprised you have 6k body and an abundance of counter. Pretty good matchup into Reiju. Bad matchup into the starter deck Luffy. And then a good matchup into the RP Law. Nothing really drastically shocking me here. I am interested to see how many Luffy's are actually being used. That's the other one. Here we go. SDO1 Luffy had 758 games in this season. Which interests me because I haven't actually seen this at all myself. And again, that's another reason why this is super useful. It really helps to be able to look in and be like, oh, this is like an off-meta deck that might genuinely catch me off guard. So yeah, I don't think I need to go through and do a breakdown of everything. There are a few decks that I'm super interested in, for example, Ace. I haven't seen a lot of Ace. This is a good reason why. The only data that we have is that it's had an absolutely terrible matchup going into Sakazuki and a really unfavorable matchup going into Moria. And my mindset again is that if you're losing more than one of the triangle, it's a deck that you shouldn't even be looking at, to be honest. Here we can look at Nami, and I think Nami can be a little bit different because Nami players are just built different, I guess, right? Like some are Garbo and some are absolute Nami stands who can try and adapt to the meta, and we can see that right now this is a difficult meta to be able to adapt with. I guess the value from the Moria is super painful, but the Sakazuki win rate is really, really low right now. I suppose like Azef is never hitting against Sakazuki ever, more so than it ever has in the past. Like it's really just never touching face really, and the ability to gain like the value just isn't as there as much, especially with the Morias coming out as much. You're gonna have much larger bodies coming out, and games are gonna end a lot faster, which isn't good for Nami. One that does interest me quite a lot actually is the Purple Luffy. This is a deck that I played last format, and it's a deck that people kind of writ off immediately and said, no, it's Garbo, but we're looking at the win rates, and honestly, it's not that bad. Like, there's not a lot of people playing it from what we can see from the data. If we take a look at the Luffy, the issue is that there's so many cards with Luffy. Yeah, we see 425 OPO5 Luffy, so that's Luffy's, and it's one of the lowest like lowest decks played via popularity. So these win rates are going to be slightly skewed again because these are thousands of games compared to hundreds of games, but just from the data that we currently have, we can see that it's still doing pretty okay into the Katakuri, close to a 50-50 with a slight advantage. It has a disadvantage going into Sakazuki, which it's always had. And then one that does shock me is it's kind of 50-50 into Moria. Now, I thought this would be one that it would struggle with a lot because of the value that Moria has, especially with the Peronas early, able to rip away from your hand size. But it looks like it's going pretty 50-50, so that's really interesting. Hardly any other data, but some of the other most popular decks in the meta right now, being Yamato and the Reiju, again, positive win rates against that, which is just, yeah, super interesting. And even seeing like a 70% win rate against Reiju. And when you think about it, it doesn't really shock me, to be honest. Like, you're able to get huge bodies out, and like, you can be in a situation where, like, if you use your 9-cost Kaido super early, you could go down to 4 Dawn, right? And then like Reiju just can't do anything. So that's pretty good actually. Now that I think about that, that's nice. One of the decks I've been looking at is Perona, and this hurts to see. Perona has the worst matchup into Katakuri on the list, I think. Yeah, like you can see the opponent being Katakuri, and it has the lowest win rate against that. As someone who's played Perona, that's, yes, it's really, really difficult to be able to do anything against it. It feels unwinnable, and also has a pretty bad matchup into the Sakazuki. I think what's changed a lot is before we looked at the stage variant of Sakazuki, it was more of a balanced win rate because you could rest their blockers going into the like end turns, you could go for kills, you could loop them into the 10-cost Dofi, and it felt more of a 50-50, sometimes even felt better. And then the stage variant has come across now, where your opponent can consistently get rid of 4-cost or lowers. They always have the reduction because that stage is able to do it every single turn. And the biggest thing about that is it's not costing them a card from their hand to do that. It's not costing them any Don requirements. So, yeah, I'm not overly shocked to see that this win rate has kind of plummeted a little bit. And then 50-50 into Moria. Originally, I actually thought that Perona had a little bit more of a good matchup against the Moria, but I do think that as a Moria player, the more you play against Perona, the more you can try and adapt. I do think it's one that you should definitely practice, though. And then a pretty decent win rate into Yamato. I thought this would be higher, honestly, because you have Rosinante blocker. Some lists are putting Rebecca in. You have the Borsalino and the Sabo. There's so many blockers. You run more 2Ks than you normally would in the Sakazuki. So, yeah, and then you also have Tenko's Dofi, so being able to lock your opponent's leader. So I thought that would be higher, honestly, but there also just may not be a lot of data for that. Yeah, to finish off the ones that will go down, I'm going to look at the top 3 win rates. So we'll start with the Katakuri. Now, if there's a white blank here, it means it's just a mirror match. So Katakuri versus Katakuri is 50-50. That one comes down to player skill, player experience, and a little dash of casino luck, I suppose, from the Katakuri players. But I'm just going to blitz through. You can see it has a 45% win rate against Saka, 49 against Moria. I thought this would be lower because Moria always feels like it's just like kind of painful to play against when you're playing Katakuri because it's just so many 5s, right? So yeah, not ideal against the other 2 most popular decks you're probably going to face. 52.5% win rate against Enel. Again, I thought that would be higher, honestly. Like the 10 cost Mom and the 7 cost is huge in that matchup. We've got a negative win rate against the Yamato in 48%. Pretty good against the Reiju. Really negative against the starter deck Luffy. Negative win rate against the RP Law and the Zoro. Positive win rate into the Whitebeard. Negative into Nami. Which, does that shock me? I don't know, actually. Maybe. I think maybe a little bit it does shock me, actually, because like you get your 10 Mom out. That's a lot of counter requirements to be able to stop that. But I suppose like that's going very late into the game to be able to do that. So yeah, kind of crazy. And then we can see obviously positive into Perona, quite negative into Pluffy, negative into the black yellow Luffy, which is one to be on mind. Now I do think this result is going to be a little bit skewed for black yellow Luffy, and we can see the results here. Like I got confused because I looked here and I was like positive. Yeah, is because this deck is just coming out. There's sim data on this will be people who are playing against it for the first time, and I think the reality is that when you have more experience against the black yellow Luffy, you're gonna have a much better time, honestly. I think it's like Enel when Enel first came out, because Enel players must have been on like utter amounts of copium because they were like, I'm on top of the world, because no one knew how to play against it, so people were just attacking it non-stop. People would attack when they had 1 life and they just get it back and get value for free, and then it slowly, even though the deck was still very strong, people understood that once you put DNL to 1 life, or if you just stun them out a little bit, it can be really difficult for them to get as much value. And I think it's very similar with the black yellow Luffy. That's something we can delve into in another video, but I do think these results will drop. Next up, the Moria. We can see the full spread here again. You can just take a look there. Nothing really shocks me. I think it's nice that it has a slight positive win rate into the Katakuri and the Sakazuki. I feel like the Moria into Sakazuki is more 50-50 from my experience, so it's actually kind of interesting to see that it's a slightly favored for Moria, and I use the word slightly very strongly. But yeah, we can see some of the worst matchups for it, which is the Enel, which is quite difficult for it. That doesn't really shock me because of the life stuff. That's a pretty bad matchup into the Whitebeard, so again, you gotta watch out for that Whitebeard. You need to practice against that if you're playing against it. And I think honestly, like it's got a bad matchup into this Luffy, but you're not gonna see this as much. So I'd play 1 or 2 games just to understand why it's bad for you. And then it does have a negative matchup going into the black yellow Luffy. And that doesn't shock me because you want to be attacking with your Gekko Moria leader, and the black yellow Luffy wants to be attacked. So it's kind of like you're gaining advantage but losing it at the same time because you're pushing them closer to be able to complete their absolutely redonkulous combos. And Sakaduki, where art thou? There you are, my boy. Positive win rate into the Katakuri. Yeah, I don't see a big problem with that, honestly. Like, I feel like it's difficult as a Saka player if you don't know the matchup well, but once you do, it feels a lot easier. So that one I think just comes down to getting your numbers in, practicing against the matchup. 50-50 against the mirror. Again, negative against the Moria. So yeah, make sure you're getting as much practice in against that as you can. You're practicing both going first and second against it, because that will happen in a 10 round. You're going to probably play multiple Morias. I would say it's I mean, I don't have to guess, actually. It is the most played deck in this entire spread right now. I know the US, especially if you're based in the US, it's super duper popular right now. It's just got a bunch of tops. So I would practice going first and second against it. It feels cleaner to play second, but I think first is the right choice against the Moria, because it slows the regression down, because they're not able to get that first attack and Perona off at you. You're able to build some stuff, and sometimes, especially in the stage variant, you can go stage turn 1 and then like a Hina turn 2, and you'll have 4 cards in hand, so your opponent isn't able to Perona you, which is really, really tasty. Positive against an Earl, negative against Yamato, which doesn't shock me. You have like 8 2Ks in Sakazuki, and unless you see it's even more reliant on that, because it's like, to have a good matchup against the Yamato playing Sakazuki, you need to be able to see Virgos and Rebecca's. And if you don't see specifically that, you're gonna struggle a little bit. Sometimes you can get the Borsellino down and they don't have like the Izos coming out, and then that's okay. But like, it's a deck that doesn't heavily rely on having its board, and you're a deck that heavily relies on your opponent relying on having a board. Next up is Reiju, and we can see another negative matchup here. I think it has a lot of value, and similar to the Yamato here, if they are able to get their 7 costs out super early, you struggle so much to remove them, especially in these stage builds where you've dropped the Ice Age, because you're not able to just go Ice Age, Houndblaze it, because you're running stage now. You have to rely on having a higher Don, and if they get that out early, that can be painful, because you're taking attacks from the lead and then attacks from this rush 7 cost body that's hard to, and then it's, before you know it, it's all becoming a lot, and you're dead. Positive match, I'm just going to ignore the Luffy. Like, I don't think you're going to see it that much. Positive into RP Law. Yeah, you can just bottom deck everything and outvalue them. Negative into the Newgate. Again, doesn't shock me a lot. Has a lot of rush cards. You're kind of like, please go away. So yeah, super positive win rate going into the black yellow Luffy, and I think this is because it's very easy for you to just not attack them. You can just sit there, slowly remove any of the cards that they play. When they go for their killer combo or like a super strong combo, they have to have a card out first that does that last self damage, because if you're not attacking, you just don't care. So a lot of the times they'll have to pay 5, play out the Luffy, self-damage, then play out 2 of their babies. Oh no, 1 of their babies, use lead effect, get the 2, and then it's like, okay, you're able to do 1, but you have 1 life left. I have a board full of 7 8-cost Morias, and I'll slowly just kill you down and your value's gone. As well as that, you're also bottom decking their cards. You're not KOing them a lot of the time, so they're not seeing those go to the trash, so that they can recoup them with the lead ability. And since when their damages go to the bottom of deck as well, it is bottom of deck, right? Am I being a goober? I don't know, actually. Let's have a look. Black, yellow, Luffy deck. Let's have a look. I can't remember if it's... Please. Your face-up life cards are placed to the bottom of your deck. Yes, there we go. I'm not losing my marbles. Yes, my point was that, like, because you're bottom decking their characters, and if you do damage to them when their life is face-up, that's going as well. They slowly lose some, like, ability to grab some of these cards from their trash to be able to put into life with the lead ability, which is a small thing, but it does matter, and it can equate to some of your victories if you play your cards right. That's all I'm going to go into right now. I'm excited to see what data we can get in the future. This is a bit of a long one, sorry if it was very rambly. Data like this really excites me, so yeah, if you want to see more like this, let me know, and definitely go and check out the lists here. Again, huge thanks to Tommy for allowing me to do this. I specifically asked them if I could do this. I'm not just taking someone's content without permission. So yeah, go check this out. Check out the Discord that they're getting this data from, and yeah, give this post some love and have a great day. Peace.